fabulous, wonderfully groomed Mr. Andrew McCarthy. I think that...
Is this one on? Hi, guys.
Guys, what are we going to do real quick is we're going to have a short Q&A. So if you have any questions lined up, if you can line up behind those microphones that are in the aisles on either side with, oh, there you go, with your questions. And then immediately after the movie, we're going to do the short Q&A, we're going to show the movie, and then Mr. McCarthy is going to come back and he's actually going to sign autographs in this room immediately after the movie. So if you guys are all set and prepared to not only ask your questions but have something signed by him, please hang around after the movie. Mr. McCarthy, or Andrew, how would you like for me to address you, sir?
Andrew, please. My dad is Mr. McCarthy.
Yeah, I heard that one. How are you, sir?
Yeah, great. If there are no questions, I can just ramble on.
Please, you start. And let's talk about the movie or what you've been doing lately.
Sure. Well, lately I've been... well, the short version is in the last 10 years I've also become a travel writer. So I'm an editor at National Geographic Traveler magazine, and so I get to travel around the world and do a lot of that kind of stuff. But I'm directing a television show, a new show called Orange is the New Black, which will be a Netflix original program that'll be coming on in July. And I'm acting this week in a show called Unforgettable, which is, I guess, a CBS show, which will be on in July. And Bernie is still dead. Has been for a long time now, and yet he lives on. But I find the life of this movie remarkable. I mean, when we were making this movie, we thought it was utterly ridiculous and completely stupid, and we had a ball making it. We had a very sort of loose script, and then we kind of came up with ridiculous ideas, like, what if we throw him over the edge of the balcony? That'd be a good idea. And so it was like, yeah, let's do that. And well, what if the tide comes in and washes him out to sea? Yeah, let's do that. So it was all very kind of on the fly. And often when you do movies like that are on the fly, you think they're really funny while you're doing it, but it's sort of an inside joke and it's not funny at all when you're actually watching it. But I think the movie somehow turned out to be quite funny and stupid in its own way. And I don't think there's a day goes by that people don't come up to me and kind of go, hey, where's Bernie? You know, truck drivers particularly love Weekend at Bernie's. I get a lot of truck drivers rolling down their windows, screaming out, hey, Andy, where's Bernie? You know, so yeah, I mean, it was great fun to do, and then we made the terrible mistake of doing a second one.
Oh, that's right.
Which I've blocked out, and I hope all you will too. But the writer came up with an idea, they want us to do a second one, and they want us to do it down in the Caribbean for 3 months. And we're all like, yeah, that's a great idea. But we don't have a script, and I'm like, we didn't the first time, it'll be fine. So anyway, but I think the first one sort of holds up in its own weird, sort of odd way. But there's a question, yes, sir.
I was wondering who from like your movie days, who do you still stay in touch with? Do you still like talk to all the people, your co-stars, like?
Yeah, it's a funny thing, the whole Brat Pack thing, at the time it was, it's become this sort of iconic, affectionate term representing this sort of, glossy golden era of, 80s film, and that's lovely. But at the time, the Brat Pack was a very pejorative, sort of negative, nasty term. It was originally by a writer for a magazine called New York Magazine, was doing an interview with Emilio Estevez and followed Emilio around. And Emilio had the bright idea of taking the writer out drinking, which is probably never, publicists nowadays would never let their client do that. And for reasons just like the Brat Pack. And so Emilio thought it'd be an even better idea if he got some of his buddies to go drinking with him and the writer. And so the writer was a contemporary, I think, of them, and just was really resentful that these young guys had the world by the tail and he had to chase around after them and write about them. And so he wrote a really nasty article called them the Brat Pack. And I remember it was on the cover of New York Magazine, and it was a picture from St. Elmo's Fire. We were making that at the time. It was a picture of Emilio Estevez and Rob Lowe and Judd Nelson and my elbow. And they said that I would never be in the Brat Pack because I wasn't kind of cool enough and hip enough, and I wasn't, and of course, that's been all true. And anyway, so then it took on a life of its own. I remember the first time I heard the term Brat Pack, and I just went, oh no. Because, especially when you're a young actor, you don't want to be all labeled and all that kind of stuff. And then it seemed kind of negative and nasty. And, like say, in time, it's taken on this iconic kind of affection. And now it's It's lovely in a certain way. It's just nice, and it's easy. But that's not an answer to your question at all. Do I keep in touch? Yes, sometimes. I live in New York and always have, and a lot of the other guys live in LA. And I saw Molly recently. I saw John Cryer for the first time in a long time. We looked at each other and both went, "Pretty in Pink, huh?" Who knew? I mean, we thought that was a ridiculous movie about a girl. You're going to make a whole movie about a girl who's going to make a dress to go to a dance? This is a movie. So we were, wrong about that one too. A little Pretty in Pink aside, I was, at the end of that movie, I don't know if I'm sure if you like these 80s kind of movies, you've seen Pretty in Pink, a lot of you, and at the end of it, there's a prom scene where I say to Molly, I go back and I say to her, I love you. And it was all a reshoot because originally the movie ended with her ending up with John Cryer's character, and they did a test screening for audiences, and they all hated that. They wanted her to end up with my character, so we reshot the ending. And I was in New York at the time doing a play, and my head was shaved. And so I flew out to California to do the scene, and they put a really bad wig on my head. So I think if they thought we'd still be talking about the movie 25 years later, they would have paid for a better wig, And it's a lot of wig acting, because I just look so forlorn with that bad wig on my head. And yeah, that's what whenever I think of the end of Pretty, people always talk about and quote it to me, and all I think about is that silly sort of dead rodent that was on my head. So, but sometimes we hang around and stay in touch, but I think everyone sort of has lives and moves on. And you also have to keep in mind, those were things, it was a movie, you do a movie for like 8 weeks, 10 weeks, and then you can sort of go on. It's frozen there in time for people watching it, but if you're doing it, you want other things, sort of, But I mean, those movies are interesting. They also weren't the A movies of the time. They weren't people weren't really fighting to get in a movie about people who drag a dead body around, you know what I mean? Or a guy who kisses a mannequin, you know what I mean? These weren't necessarily the real serious films that, they wanted to be in movies like Falcon and the Snowman or something, which now people are like, what? But at the time they were very, so, they've taken on these iconic things in these movies, which is lovely. It's one, people have also asked me, has nothing to do with your question. I'll just keep talking in case, unless someone else stands up. But then I'll shut up and let this lady have a chance. But people have said, why are those movies so popular? And I think the movies are popular because it was the mid-'80s, right? And what was happening in the mid-'80s was that VCR became available for the first time. And people that were renting movies were young people, and the movies that young people were renting were those movies. So suddenly you could take us home in a way that you could never have done that before. You'd see a movie once, maybe twice, and then a couple of years later it's on Sunday afternoon on Channel 9. And suddenly people could watch it 10, 15 times and take ownership of us in a way. And so that's why to most of the women in this room, I'll forever be 22 years old, So, anyway, hi.
That's actually a wonderful segue to my question, because you look fabulous, and I was just
I'm far away.
But I was just wondering if you had a creepy aging self-portrait of yourself hidden in your attic somewhere.
Yeah, I do, yeah. We're selling that down at the table downstairs. Thank you.
Anyone else? Hello.
Hi, I'm not a Philadelphia native, but what I first knew of Philadelphia was Mannequin.
Yeah.
And usually the first thing everyone from Iowa